Hello. I'm Marshall Goldsmith. Very happy to be here on LinkedIn Live. Very happy. We've been talking about interesting challenges that face leaders, coaches during this coronavirus epidemic, the challenges faced around the world. Had a fascinating morning. I've been on the call with people from probably 10 different countries talking about experiences in their country. And today we have a wonderful session set up. First, we have Bill Carrier. Bill has a fascinating background. He's from West Point. He's been an officer in the Army. He's worked with many CEOs from a variety of cyber organizations. And Bill also has an interesting background in the nuclear world. He's dealing with radioactivity, with things that can cause problems, how to handle sensitive materials, which is also fascinating. And also we have Kasti. Mo is one of the world's authorities in healthcare leadership. He's written a book about this, which is fantastic. He's been in the healthcare business for 30 years and really a world's authority on leading in this very uncertain times. So Bill and Mo, let us get it kicked off. And we're going to start with you briefly introducing yourselves. Why don't you have Mo, you go first. Give me a couple-minute introduction. Who's Mo?
So thank you, Marshall. It's great to be with you. First and foremost, I'm a husband and a dad of two young men who are dealing with this disruptions, but they're managing through it. And my son still have aspirations to be a president of the United States. So more to him. I have the privilege to serve in healthcare for 30 years, from hospitals to clinics to the teaching side for the medical school to working for healthcare companies like GE Healthcare. I founded two healthcare companies that are Inc. 5000 in healthcare. We're passionate for helping healthcare leaders through leadership strategy and innovation, and we consider it to be a privilege to be out there today in this difficult time.
Thank you so much. How about Bill?
Good morning, Marshall. It's great to be here with you and Mo, and thank you for what you're doing. It's a great service to be setting up these informational webinars in this moment of crisis. I am Bill Carrier. I'm a leadership coach, a West Point graduate and former Army officer. I work with senior leaders, CEOs, and C-suite executives in companies from about 100 million to about 10 billion in annual revenue, and large federal agencies. It's almost always about leadership, about how one person takes a look at the world and acts in it, and how they can enhance that skill so that they can have better lives, their people can have better lives, and their enterprises are more productive.
Well, let's get started, Bill. We're talking about now leading in what you call a VUCA world. What does that acronym mean? And give me some of your reactions as to how does that relate to today's crisis we face? And then Mo, we're going to go to you to healthcare leadership. So Bill, get started. What does that mean? VUCA.
Sure. Thank you, Marshall. So VUCA is an acronym that the Army War College came up with in late 1980s, early 1990s. They were thinking post-Cold War and what things were going to look like after the idea that there was going to be one large conflict, probably with Russia. And now they were looking at a world which was very complex with multiple hotspots. And so the acronym itself is VUCA, V-U-C-A, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. In other words, when we talk about volatility, we're saying that the rate of change changes. It moves so quickly and it goes up and down. It's a little bit like the stock market over the last couple weeks. When we talk about uncertainty, what we're saying is you can't predict the future because it's very hard to figure out what cause and effect relationships are. And when we talk about complexity, what we're saying is that everything is interrelated. It's a little bit like a spider web. You can't pull just one piece of the spider web. Everything's connected. And when we talk about ambiguousness, what we're saying is it's very hard to tell what something means. It's like looking at a stoplight when the sun is behind it. You know there's a signal there, but you're not quite sure which signal it is. That's VUCA, and it's very consistent with the environment that we see right now. A fast-moving, rapidly changing, uncertain environment with the coronavirus.
Okay, Bill, give us one suggestion for leaders for leading in a VUCA world.
So I'm going to suggest that it requires a different kind of leadership than the analytical planning leadership we've seen very often, particularly in the corporate world. Because the environment changes so fast, you need to shift the way that you think about things. In fact, I'm going to shift VUCA as an acronym to say, start with V, your values. Know what you care about. Know what the purpose of your organization is. Know what you believe right and wrong is. Because those things are what are going to help you actually make decisions when the moment arises. Because it's going to keep changing so fast that if you're not ready when there's a moment, you're going to miss it.
Mm-hmm.
The U is about understanding. Understand as much as you can about the situation, knowing that much of the information is going to be lacking or ambiguous, and then make a C, a choice, quickly from the options that arise and take action.
Very good. Very good. Very good. Thank you so much. Mo, you were on a call with me today, and in our call, we were able to hear what's happening in, I don't know, 10 countries or so. And it was fascinating. And the real reflection I had is no one knows what's going on. No one knows what's going on. It's very easy to smugly sit back and criticize others. We ask a question. Someday the doors are going to open. Someday these doors are going to open. You're not going to lock down the world for 3 months. If you do, we'll have a depression that makes the 1929 look like a picnic. So, they're not going to lock down the world for three months. You can't stand it. People start getting hungry, starving to death. Lots of bad things happen. So I ask a question. In your country, what's going to happen when the doors open? And we heard this myriad range of guesses, of answers, and one of them was, we're going to do nothing. We never close the door. That was in Belarus. Basically, to heck with it. Let her rip. A lot of nobody's even dealing with the question. I was shocked at how few countries are even dealing with, in the UK, what's going to happen when the doors open. Never been discussed. Nobody's even discussing it. In the United States, we heard rumors that, these are still rumors, of basically building boundaries around the states. Because if you open up one part because they feel they're over the worst, what about the part the worst is just starting? And if you allow people to, interact, it's going to spread to the next place. So tell the story about Lebanon, which I think was a fascinating story, easy to laugh at, but you know what? It's an answer. And then we'll talk about what are some of your reflections in leading in this new coronavirus VUCA. Okay, Mo.
For the VUCA world. So yeah, it's interesting. I go back to Lebanon, where I lived during the Civil War, and I was a first responder. So I tap into kind of our history of living through an extended disruption of 15 years of Civil War, and so I still have roots there. And they were starting to kind of ease back into work by going through kind of an even and odd number of your license plates, so split it kind of the country in half and mix that way. There's no scientific aspect to that, but really, for us in healthcare, we haven't even got to the level where we're thinking about what's going to happen after, right? We're still getting ready for the deluge and the surge of patients coming into the door. And like you said on the call this morning, we have 50 different curves that's going to occur, right? We're in New York right now and learning a lot of lessons, but everybody else in the country is still in a waiting mode and enabling to kind of get ready for that. And that's going to take a while for all of that to happen. So just like what Bill said, is what I'm working with our team out in the trenches is really just to kind of remind our healthcare leaders, our healthcare provider, which we are so very proud. They are really the heroes for us.
Right.
And owe them a great gratitude for being out there with courage And so we're trying to remind them is that when things change, you cannot control the change, but what you can control is the fundamentals. And the fundamentals is you were trained for this, right? You know your value, you know you're going to do the right thing, and you're going to do your best.
Right.
And so always be anchored with that. And then have that aspect of that, know that you got to always be in action, and that the strategy or whatever plan you came up with has to be just like water. It flows with whatever situations you're going to find yourself into. And then we're trying to be empathetic with everybody, right? We have to be very crystal clear about the communication, and so that there's no ambiguity. And then just kind of execute, be always in action, because if you keep in action, you adjust and you learn from other what's going on across the country. So that's kind of what we're really in action for.
You know, well, one thing I don't know if it's surprising, maybe it shouldn't have been, is how little we seem to have learned when this was coming. I mean, it happened in China. There seemed to be very little learning or communication from that. Then it happens here and there. Now it's happened in the US. And, you know, I have been reasonably surprised at what I call the lack of learning from others' experience. And even today, and Mo, I'd like your thoughts on this. You see what's happening in New York, and other people say, well, we don't have a problem. Yeah, we don't have a problem. Well, yeah, you're right. You don't have a problem. And New York didn't have a problem a month ago either. So somehow you think you're exempt from this? So what do you think's going on with this, what I consider to be the opposite of what you just said? Instead of learning from everybody, this, to me, almost pervasive relearning that seems to start over and over. What's going on with that?
You know, what's unique about healthcare is we're always very reactive. It's a business based on, I wait for something to happen, then I react. Patient has to get sick, then I do something, right? So we're very reactive. And no matter how much we say we're innovative, we're so behind. It takes us actually an average of 17 years to adopt a best practice. So we're late.
Yeah.
We actually could have learned from the Ebola. We could have learned from, and there were things that were made and adjusted to our processes, but our supply chains was never adjusted. You know, our way of being able to share equipments and other things, and even knowledge or even data. I mean, we're not even connected. So if you really want to find out who has an extra ventilators, good luck, right? So we have a long way in healthcare for us to really improve, and that's where leadership is so important. We have to really make sure that we learn and innovate from this, but then accelerate that learning, and not kind of go back to the old way of doing things.
And you know, my good friend, Dr. Jim Kim, led the anti-Ebola effort in the United States. At the time, he was president of the World Bank, a medical doctor, a great guy. He said we tend to go from periods of panic to complacency. We go from complete panic, like Ebola, this is going to be awful, the end of the world, to nothing. And then we go from nothing to panic to nothing to panic. And now we're back in closing in on panic again. So maybe any suggestions, Mo, on what we could do this time to not keep repeating the same mistake we just made with Ebola over with this one?
Well, it's interesting. Yesterday, the one decision that Governor Cuomo made that I think is going to have a lasting effect is what he called flex, surge and flex, and where you kind of, instead of having hundreds and thousands of hospitals out there and working independently, you really have to treat them as a system. And you really have to make sure that you move things around and resources around. And I think that's an opportunity for us to work through that. I think the implication is going to be more focus on prevention, focus on true public health, because I think we talk about it, not really embedded in that, right? How do we really make sure that we relook at our healthcare system? And we haven't seen the curve where in the South, where we have more, less health outcomes and less healthy individual, we still haven't seen what's the impact is going to be on that. I think it's going to be interesting to see if we can, under the DoD, do we have a health surge strategy as a nation? Right?
I'm going to ask Mo one more question and then go to Bill. Mo, I know you don't know the answer, but Florida has taken kind of a different approach than a lot of other states. What do you think is going to happen in Florida?
This is the scary part, and this is not a political statement or anything, but we're known in Florida that we have the most retiree. We have a very high aging populations that come to enjoy the sun fire. And so then we were late in closing our beaches, and we were late to really start thinking seriously about it. We have a great healthcare system, so hopefully we have enough bed. The question is, do we have enough ventilators? But if anybody knows, all we know is we're going to be on the curve. The question is, how high are you going to go on the curve? And what are you going to do afterward when Georgia and others, right? It's just, that's the big question.
Okay, very good. Bill, we're going to open up, Justin, we're going to get some questions from you, but everyone can write in your questions in the chat bar right now. Bill and Mo, Bill, one final comment for leaders based on what you've heard today and through all of our phone calls. You've been on a lot of phone calls with people from all around the world. What's a final suggestion you would have for leaders in these changing times?
Well, I think I'll say that at West Point, they used to teach us that a crucial idea of leadership is to take the mission first and people always. In other words, you've got to pay attention to your purpose, the thing that you're doing, the thing that your organization is organized to do, and you have to pay attention to your people because that's the only way that things happen. And it's inherently important to take care of people. I know one CEO who has a 90-minute crisis meeting every day. And once a week, he convenes for 5 minutes, and then he closes the crisis meeting and gives that 85 minutes remaining to his executives to spend time with their families. And that way, he's actually doing both things. He's paying attention to his purpose, and he's paying attention to his people.
Very good. Thank you. Mo, a final thought for leaders before we might have some questions from the listeners.
So I've been a student of The Art of War, Sun Tzu, The Art of War. And what he teaches you is that you cannot control the heavens. Things are going to change. It's going to rain. The weather is going to change. The terrain is going to change. But us as a leader, all we can do is learn the fundamentals and then be able to manage the fundamentals. And for us as business owners, as leaders, there are fundamentals of our businesses. First and foremost, we have to take care of ourselves. If we don't take care of ourselves, we cannot give what we don't have. And so we have to do that. And then it's really about the team and their family and the empathy, like Bill said, is we have to make sure that everybody is dealing with this. Their life is being disrupted. Then the client, I mean, what are we doing in our company? We said we're going to do free coaching. We're going to make masks for our nurses and physicians. And we changed our website to be now Healthcare Hero website so that we can celebrate and tell the story of heroism, right? And then you have to have a strategy that's agile. It's going to go like water and it flow. And then you got to manage your financials. I mean, those are the 5 things that, independent of which company you are, whether you're in healthcare or not healthcare, these are the fundamentals. So that's what we tell
Okay, and let me ask you one question. I'll put you on the spot a little bit here, and that is, assume you're now the governor of Florida, and assume that basically this has either been delegated to you or passed you, however you want to look at it. You're in charge. The doors are opening next week because you can't keep the doors closed forever. The doors are opening next week. What are you going to do?
It's I would do what Taiwan did. Taiwan learned from the SARS outbreak, and they're very diligent about using technology. And you don't land into their country They know exactly who you are, what you're doing. They will communicate with you. That you have to go on lockdown for 14 days. And so we have to use technology. We have to be very serious about, look, this is something that's going to be disruptive, and we have to manage that. And we can't just have it just free for all. Now, all our hope is vaccine, and there's a lot of innovations going on right now around treatment and vaccines. And hopefully that will be, but that's down the road. And you just have to kind of be very serious about, no, you can't go to the beach right now. It's how long that's going to be the challenge. But I will be very serious about managing in and out.
Okay, very good. All right, Justin. Justin, do we have any questions right now?
Yes, Marshall. First question comes from Jathan Genova. And the question it's actually right on what you've been talking about with leaders and what they need to do. He says, what are the most important things, what's the most important thing that a leader needs to do and also avoid doing in these times?
I like that. Let's focus on the avoid, because I think, and hello, Jathan, how you doing? He's a friend. Let's talk about what not to do. Mo, how about what not to do? What's a thought you have on that?
I mean, to be too optimistic, it's not to be too optimistic, right? You have to be realistic and not just way too optimistic because if anybody could say, I already know what's going to happen, none of us know what's going to happen. Right? And so we have to be authentic of saying, we're going to work and figure out along the way, but we're into this together. So don't be way too optimistic that you lose the confidence of your team.
Very important point. Very important point. Bill, I can't see you, Bill. Are you there? Bill seems to have disappeared in the world of technology. Justin, how about another question? Mo and I will work on them.
Yes. Okay. Bill's technology did drop off, and we're working to get him back on. In the meantime, we have a question from Stacy Statterman, and she says, what are the top 2 communications adjustments that leaders need to make right now?
Okay. One, I want to build on what Mo just said, and I think you need to balance being honest with being realistic. And then number 2, something I always teach people is during times of change, people do not need less structure, they need more. And people need a real clear understanding of where are we going now. Now, back to Mo's good point, I think it's very important to focus on, look, I'm not saying this is going to be true next week or tomorrow. All I can say is everyone in this organization should have a good feel for right now where we're going and headed in a direction now. That's the best we know of now. And as Mo said, being honest and saying, look, this is where we are going now. These are the directions now. And the other suggestion I would have for leaders is really encouraging people to say, if you have ambiguity, if you don't know where you're going, you feel lost and confused, look, talk to your manager, because people do need leadership. They do need structure. And at any second in time, they need clarity. Back to Mo's great point, though, don't BS people. Don't pretend this is the answer. And by the way, Mo, one thing I hope you got out of all of our calls, don't be smug and laugh at others. Because, it's easy to laugh at others when you're not making the decisions. You're making the decisions. I can tell you, they're going to be hard decisions made in the future. And no matter what any leader decides in the future, they are going to get crucified in the press. They're going to get crucified. And by the way, I'm not just talking about President Trump. I'm talking about the governors. I'm talking about other countries. I'm talking about Boris Johnson. They're going to get crucified because every decision is what I call a yes, but decision. Yeah, it's great, but you're hurting someone. And the press is only going to focus on the but and ignore the yes. So it's going to get tough out there. Anyway, very, very good. Bill, welcome back. Justin, what's another? Oh, Mo, what's your response to Justin's last part?
So one of the things that, and I know because we have 2 companies, we have employees and team members in India, we have team members here. And so the one thing that I'm coaching and I'm following is crystal clear condition of satisfaction. When we're making requests these days in a very ambiguous situations, we have to be very clear about what is it that we need our team members to be working on, and what does it look like when it's done? Because there's sensitivity, they're under pressure, they're stressed, and what we cannot afford people just spinning their wheels. And so you want to give them as much as, here's the condition of satisfaction, here's what I need, here's by when, here's how it looks like when it's done, and can you loop it back to me and say, let me just double check, are we on the same page for it? Now more than ever, this is what we need from a communication perspective.
Thank you. And finally, Justin, one last question, and Bill, you can try to do this one. Justin.
Okay.
Perfect. Hey, Marshall. So we have the last question here comes from Vijay Upadhyaya. And on that topic of making hard decisions, where neither one is a great decision, the question is how can we get over the fear of losing what we have worked so hard for and take these big risks?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Bill?
Mo, thank you. Vijay, Mo and Marshall have talked a little bit about this, and it's about recognizing that in the end, things will work out, and yet looking hard and clearly at the current environment. That in fact, this is such an important concept. Jim Collins interviewed Admiral Stockdale about it, and he refers to it as the Stockdale complex. That the idea is, if you look at the harsh reality on the ground, you have to in order to survive, but you also have to have the heart and the courage that comes from looking at what will happen in the end, which is a good outcome. So it's pragmatic realism.
Okay, I like that term, pragmatic realism. Okay, Mo.
Well, I want to add to it from my own personal experience growing up during the war, right? What you learn is you have to really be agile and be willing to let go of anything and everything except your health, your family, your loved one, and safety, right? This is an unprecedented time. And let's just keep things in perspective. No matter what, everything is replaceable. But it's our health, our talent, our families are the most important thing, and everything else. And so this whole thing will make us realize that we have to be agile of not being so connected to worrying about losing something, except making sure that we have our health and our family.
Very good. And I think this is a really good question, and I'm going to give you a tough answer. I have a home in New York, and I love 9th Avenue, and I love Restaurant Row, and all those small businesses are going to go broke. They're not kind of going to go broke or sort of going to go broke or come up with some creative idea to not go broke. Nine months of no tourism in New York, and who are we kidding? There's going to be no tourism for nine months. They're going to go broke. It is going to be phenomenally painful. There is no happy talk that makes it go away. I want to go back to what Mo and Bill have said. How can you make this easy? The answer is you can't. How do you avoid pain? You don't. Some of this is going to involve pain. Some of it's not going to be fun, positive thinking is going to make it go away. Not really. A lot of this is going to be tough and it's going to hurt. I think what both Mo and Bill have said, which is a very good point, is you have to face the reality that exists. And you have to say, yeah, I am losing something. I did put my life into this small business, and the reality is it's gone. And by the way, I saved money for 10 years and it's gone. It's gone. And it's not going to come back next week. And basically, I got to start over. And finally, what Mo said, which I love, is, you've got to say, look, I've still got my health. I've got my life. I've got my family. This is incredibly painful. No use hiding from reality. It's tough. And I'm going to do my best to start a new life in a new world. Not easy. I love that term, Bill, you said pragmatic realism. Pragmatic, you've got to be pragmatic and positive. Pragmatic optimism, I like that. Pragmatic optimism. We've got to be real. We can't be fake. People don't know the answers. People are going to lose a lot here. and it's just getting started. It's not over. On the other hand, Mo, back to your point and Bill's point, you got to be thankful for what we have. Realize your health, your family, take care of yourself as best you can. And again, we're getting ready to start over after this crisis. Finally, let me say thank you so much to Mo. Thank you so much to Bill. I appreciate your donating your time to be here. Everybody in this program is a volunteer. We're all just doing our best. I'm a Buddhist that only do what I teach if it works for you. On these programs, we give you a lot of ideas. If the ideas work for you, hey, do it. Hopefully they're helpful. If you hear something that doesn't work for you, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Don't fix it. I'm going to take a deep breath, let it go. You're not going to do what you don't want to do anyway. So do what works for you. If it doesn't work for you, let it go. I've really loved having the opportunity to talk to hundreds of people around the world about what's going to be happening out there. Hopefully this is a little bit value for you. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Mo. Thank you, Bill. So talk to you tomorrow, same time, same station. Goodbye.